The most courageous character of Ender's Game. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Winston S. Churchill. In the book Ender's Game, Ender shows his courage by his willingness to learn, leaving his family so he could stop the human race from being destroyed, and his self-defense. The willingness to learn showed how he wanted to learn how to save the world. Ender leaving his family showed he had to be brave to leave the people he loved. He used his self-defense only to defend himself. He would never intentionally hurt anyone for any other reason except for by accident. In the science fiction classic Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card, Ender is the most courageous character. Ender is always willing to learn something new, so he knew what he was doing and could get better at it. The battle room is open at all the time. If you want, I'll take you there in the off hours and show you some of the things I know. I'm not a great soldier, but I'm pretty good, and I sure know more than you, if you want, Ender said. Ender wanted to learn the skills needed to be a useful soldier. He was willing to improve his skills, even if it meant taking up his free time. Without Petra, Ender would never have learned to shoot good. Ender wanted to be used in a battle instead of just watching. To do that, he needed to get better at shooting and strategy. Ender was grateful for the time he got to learn with Petra because it taught him important skills he would need later. Ender always wanted to learn even if he was in a tough situation. He was willing to learn new tactics and was willing to teach others. And they learned it. In practice skirmishes, they began to realize how much harder it was to shoot an enemy who was attacking feet first. As soon as they were convinced of that, they practiced the maneuver more willingly. Ender taught Rat Army a new tactic, and he learned how new strategies took time for them to get used to. Since Ender had his launchy army, he was always using new tactics and finding out new ways that were more effective. Ender was willing to take suggestions and willing to share the better tactics with his army. Ender was happy to do this to make sure that they had a better chance at winning. Some of the people in his toon didn't like that they were learning from someone way younger than them, but they learned that he had good strategies. If Ender didn't learn and teach, him and his armies would have been in ruins. Ender left his family to save the world and their lives. If Ender didn't leave, they would just be another family scared for the buggers to come to Earth and destroy them. I'm afraid, said Ender quietly, but I'll go with you. Tell me again, Graf said. It's what I was born for, isn't it? If I don't go, why am I alive? Not good enough, said Graf. I don't want to go, said Ender, but I will. Ender knew he was born for this purpose. He really didn't want to go, but he went to save his family from the buggers. He loved Valentine and didn't want to leave her, but he wanted to keep her safe. He knew he was the only hope the world had to survive. Ender wanted to be able to see his family again, but he knew the world needed him more. Graf wanted him to see how important he was to the survival of the human race. Without Graf convincing him, Ender probably would have had a harder time leaving, or might not have left at all. If Ender did not go, the human race would have been destroyed. Ender always loved his family and missed them, but he knew how important he was to the universe. Ender had to be strong on leaving the people who cared about him. If he was not strong, the human race would have been wiped out. Did Valentine see me disappear in the shuttle? He thought of waving at her, running to the cameraman and saying, Can I tell Valentine goodbye? He didn't know that it would be censored out of the tape if he did, for the boys soaring out to Battle School were supposed to be heroes. They weren't supposed to miss anybody. Ender didn't know about censorship, but he did know that running to the cameras would be wrong. Ender wanted Valentine to know that he cared about her, but he knew he shouldn't run at the cameras. Ender knew Valentine might miss him like he missed her, but he had to be strong to leave and save his family. Ender had to be strong and play it off like he didn't miss anyone, because heroes aren't supposed to miss anyone. He knew he would have to be strong in the years to come. He knew that he'd miss Valentine, and she would miss him. He knew that he might be homesick, but he was willing to be homesick if it meant saving the world. He knew that there was a tough path ahead, but he was willing to take it if it meant saving his family, especially Valentine. Ender's self-defense played a big role in his courage. Ender was in many situations where he could only protect himself and no one else was there. I have to win this now, and for all time, or I'll fight it every day, and it will get worse and worse. Ender made sure to be thorough with his fights so they would leave him alone. If Ender did not win the fights like this, he would not be left alone. Ender did not like to fight, but he did it when he had to. If Ender did not fight, he would have been bullied every day, day in and day out, until he fought back. So Ender leaned back against the wall behind him, then jumped up and pushed off with his arms. His feet landed in Bonzo's belly and chest. Ender spun in the air, landed on his toes and hands, flipped over, scooted under Bonzo. This time when he kicked upwards into Bonzo's crotch, he connected hard and sure. Bonzo did not cry out in pain. He did not react at all, except that his body rose a little in the air. It was as if Ender had kicked a piece of furniture. Bonzo collapsed, fell to his side, and sprawled directly under the spray of steaming water from a shower. He made no movement whatever to escape the murderous heat. Ender had Ender figured he had to beat Bonzo by a lot. He knew that if he didn't beat that Bonzo and his friends would always come back to fight another day. Ender put up a great fight to show that he could beat people who are bigger than him. Bonzo fought with honor, but had no clue what Ender was capable of. Bonzo didn't know Ender fought to win forever. Ender didn't like people wanting to kill him, but he had to deal with it and fight them off. If Ender just ignored the threat, he would be dead. He didn't like to fight, but when he had to, he was thorough. Bonzo, on the other hand, fought people who were a posed threat or if he disliked them. Ender figured that he would try to get Bonzo to leave him alone, because otherwise they would have killed him. Ender didn't know how badly he hurt Bonzo until it was too late. Some would argue that Valentine is the most courageous character. That is incorrect, because the only reason she would be courageous is by letting Ender leave. Ender is courageous in many more ways. First off, he left the people he loved to save their lives. If Ender did not leave, they would have all died. Ender's staying meant that Ender would be killed as well, meaning the supposed savior would die with the rest of the human race. Ender decided to go because he knew what he needed to do to save his family. Second of all, he had to defend himself from people who tried to kill him. All that Valentine had to face was Peter. They became friends in the end. Ender made sure that the people who messed with him didn't again, while Valentine would just let them keep bothering her. Lastly, Ender had to learn things that no normal child would need to know. He had to learn to fight in null gravity. Imagine how hard that is for a homesick child to have to learn to do something they have barely heard of. Ender had to learn how to save the world from destruction. Most kids don't have to do that. Ender always learned and taught, had great self-defense, and had a lot of courage for leaving his family. Ender is the most courageous character in the book for many reasons. He always learned to help himself out, defended himself to make sure he stayed safe. Lastly, he left his family, whom he loved very much, to save the world, knowing the risks of never seeing them again. In conclusion, Ender is the most courageous character in Orson Scott Card's Ender's Game.